In true Mercury retrograde fashion, we are cutting it especially close tonight. The kickoff is at 8:15 Eastern Standard Time. It's currently 8:13 Eastern Standard Time. And today we are going to be talking about the Ravens at the Chargers. And in part, this delineation was a little bit messy. And I want to talk through what I think is going on and why it's messy. Trevor, do you know why it's messy?
Is it Mercury?
Mercury is stationing retrograde during this game.
Oh man, that's not very common, is it?
I have yet to delineate a game where this happens. And basically,
Okay.
Mercury is movement, speed, clarity of action, clarity of plays, how we are moving down the field. When Mercury is stationing retrograde, all of that gets scrumbled and scrambled and tossed all around. Part of the reason we are not on screen today is because the internet has not been working as it typically does because Mercury is stationing. If you looked in the news today, at least those who are in the United States, Microsoft Outlook, the common email application many of us use, that was down most of the day.
Huh.
We usually see some sort of weirdness on the day of the station. I think that it's exaggerated because Mercury is very debilitated in the sign of Sagittarius, but nonetheless,
Can I ask something about Mercury?
of course.
Is there anything specific about Mercury impacting siblings?
Siblings?
Yes.
Why siblings? Well, I do think that if we're looking through a modern astrological lens, which is like very problematic, and I'm not going to do that, so don't put a lot of weight in what I'm about to say. We're looking through the modern lens. They like to use ABC astrology, which each house being associated with a specific sign. The third house in this framework, not traditional astrology, but in this framework, the third house would be associated with Gemini, which is associated with Mercury
Hmm.
and is associated with siblings.
Okay.
Why do you say that?
These are two head coaches that are brothers that are going at it
Oh,
tonight. The Harbaugh
interesting.
brothers.
That's really compelling.
Yes. It's a big game. It's a big game tonight.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
fitting that something that's not very common
Is
is
taking
happening for this
place.
game. Yeah.
Do the Ravens and the Chargers play each other very frequently?
Over the history of them playing each other,
Yeah.
I think that they've only played 15 games.
And
So
that's very infrequent, all
yeah,
things considered,
yeah,
right?
yes.
Okay.
So yeah, the Ravens are winning that matchup 9-6.
Okay.
They've won nine and lost six, but that's just such a small sample size. You can't really go off of that to say, oh, the Ravens have always been better, or oh, the
Sure.
Chargers have always been worse, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And if we look at the event chart itself, there is some suggestions that the home team is at a slight advantage. Why? Because we have Mercury above the horizon doing its dirty little weird dance. The menace energy in full effect here.
Okay.
The sun and the moon are beneath the horizon. Mars is also beneath the horizon, supporting the home team. Jupiter is in the chat. It's applying to a conjunction with the ascendant. That could be reading as the away team, right? Because this is what's rising, is getting the boost from Jupiter, and the home team um, is getting the struggle and strife that is this debilitated Mercury energy. And as we start to pick this apart, I think that may be the case. But again, this is the first time I've delineated for Mercury station for a
Okay.
football game, so I'm not really positive. Um,
All things technology with Mercury, right?
Always, all the time. So there could be some miscommunications through the headsets. There could be, they're not connecting from the coaching staff that's way up top. Like
Yes.
something weird could be taking place there.
Okay.
Or it could be like plays that where it's like, well, what wait, I thought you meant this, like that type of thing.
Or clock issue.
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely a clock issue. Going into the game, it looks like the Ravens in particular might look a little bit messy. They might not look as strong or as supported as the Chargers, but I think that might change around the point of the station. And I'm going to pause this for exactly 1 second. So we see that there is, perhaps a little bit more strife happening with the away team, the Ravens, at least initially, but as that game progresses, this Mercury goes beneath the horizon, and that's when it stations retrograde.
Got it.
And when it's beneath the horizon, then it's in the domain of the Chargers.
Okay.
So it feels to me like, at least initially, there's this sense of the Ravens might not be showing out in the ways that we would generally anticipate. And then as the game progresses, the Chargers start looking off kilter and weird, and the conversation at Thanksgiving is going to be really weird for the brothers.
Yes.
You know, like that type of thing.
Yes.
If I'm just taking this at face value, if we're not considering Jupiter ascending or Mercury descending, it does look like the Chargers have an advantage.
Okay.
Okay. But if we look at the bi-wheel, this outer wheel is now the Ravens. We see the Mars and Sun kind of hugging the midheaven here. That's great for the Chargers.
Yep.
This is at the start of the game. Remember that. So at the start of the game, they're getting like this really lovely support. They're getting a wide trine from the, not super wide, it's a 3-degree trine for the Sun. A trine from the transiting Jupiter to their Sun, a trine from the transiting Jupiter to their Mars. This generally bodes well for overall performance, like good luck, finesse, that's kind of on their size, or on their side, I should say. Excuse me, this is all for the Ravens. Whoa, 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 Mercury retrograde moment. But everything I said, I stand by, except for the Ravens. Like, this is for the Ravens, okay? So we're seeing like this kind of lucky streak in their support here, with Jupiter forming positive aspects to their Sun, to their Mars. Transiting Sun is conjoining their Pluto. I don't know how hugely influential this is, but it does seem like more torque is backing up the Ravens. What really caused me to pause, and this is above and beyond the aspects that we still have to talk about, it's this transiting moon applying to a conjunction with the Raven's natal moon. Chiron is in the mix. We don't love that because the moon has to make a pit stop and hang out with Chiron first. But this lunar activation tends to be positive. It just shows like they are kind of, as a cohesive unit, they're being activated.
Yeah.
They're more on for the performance. Again, Sun and Mars hugging the midheaven, beautiful, chef's kiss. We love to see it. When I was talking to you before, I meant was this team impacting the other one. So I had them flipped.
Okay.
So this, it looks like the Ravens would be more dominant against the other team, the Chargers, and I'm going to show you all why without being cryptic. Now, the outermost wheel is the Chargers, and we see that the Sun and Mars of the Ravens is exactly or very closely conjunct the Chiron of the Chargers. Chiron is where we have the deepest wound. How this would manifest for a team is a sense of, yes, we are cohesive, yes, we are a unit. And this is where we still struggle. We still struggle. And so for the Chargers, it could be there's just a sea of faces and they're all talented, but there's very rarely a standout figure or player. It could be they've always been the oddballs. I think with the Chargers, have they moved around a lot?
Yeah.
They've never, yeah. So usually with the Chiron in Aquarius, it's othered in some way, not feeling a part of, not feeling accepted. They might not have a very strong fan base. They might not have a very sturdy, like, groundedness just in a sweeping sense. And then we could look to Saturn. I mean, their Saturn's pretty dignified, but we see that the moon is closely conjoining Saturn, and the moon can be associated with home. So basically this is the migrating, not migrating, but like the kind of floating team.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. And they haven't had a, like they haven't had an identity, a clear identity the last couple years, with their head coach not being really that great. And then they just got a new head coach this season. So they're in the middle of setting their identity.
Okay, that makes sense. I also have to put another point of information out, and we run into this sometimes, and this is one of those instances. I pulled the chart that was saved. This chart for the LA Chargers coincided when there were a lot of teams coming out. This might not be the most reliable chart. Okay. So we have seen this in the instance of like the Steelers, for example, sometimes with the Eagles. I did not even register this. Again, I'm a Gemini. It's Mercury retrograde. Please be gentle with me. This might not be the most reliable chart to utilize.
Okay.
It may be okay because they are back in LA now, but isn't this the team? Or was it the Rams? It's the Rams that we were talking about that was kind of bopping back and forth.
But this team
But
too. They used to be in San
they used
Diego.
to be in, okay. I think it's okay because this is associated with their current location. Yellow flag, though, a little bit of a yellow flag for me. But I mean, some of the things we've discussed do seem to map onto what they've been navigating in general, at least. Anyway, digressing. Basically, the shorthand of all of this to summarize, the Ravens give the Chargers a run for their money.
Okay.
That's what this signature suggests. We also see some dominance from the Ravens. Early activation with Mars and Sun on the midheaven, with Mars being the most prominent indicator in sports for success. Chiron on the midheaven for the Chargers is like, well, you tried, but this is kind of contrary to what we saw in the event chart. See how we are, we're struggling through it. This has been kind of a tough one for me to process through and pick apart. Now we are looking at the bi-wheel. This is the game itself, and this is representing the Ravens. We see Mars trine Venus, Mars opposite Uranus, Mars trine the Pluto energy. There's nothing happening with the sun and the moon, though we do know there's a wide applying conjunction between the moons, which I thought was generally helpful. This is not telling me much. The opposition energy, this is something we've also seen with the Chiefs. So that was another team that was generated around this time. And so, yeah, a lot of those teams are experiencing this Mars-Uranus opposition. It's not hugely significant, but there's not too much outstanding support here. When we look at the Chargers, I'm realizing every part of my delineation was generally backwards, so love that in terms of what I wrote. But Mars is forming a conjunction with Mercury. Their Mercury, the Chargers Mercury, this is good for supporting their fluidity of motion. So here again, we're getting the action is there, the forward momentum is there, which they absolutely need, especially as the game progresses. But we see this moon square moon. Whereas the Ravens are experiencing a wide moon conjunction, this square can be a stopping factor. There have been a lot of times where I'm like, oh yeah, I think this team is going to win. And I like completely brush off a bunch of squares between the transiting moon and the actual team's chart. And 9 times out of 10, it is that's the team that loses.
The moon being a big impact on this game would make sense with emotions. Because it's a brother, it's a two brother, both of them want to win this game so bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Would it make sense if it was kind of a close game?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, because I think that might be what I'm picking up. I don't know. This is a really, really weird chart for me to delineate. And it's the reason I paused before is because I'm like, oh, I never wrote down what I formally am predicting. The event chart says the away team is getting less support. And so that would be the Ravens getting less support, the Chargers getting more support. If we're looking at the actual aspects, it seems like the Ravens are getting more support. If we look at the 3 wheels, we see the Ravens getting more support initially. And with those 2 points of support, and honestly, from that alone, like that's all I have to go on.
Yeah.
I think that the Ravens are going to win. This is probably the least confident that I have felt. I don't know. I don't feel totally inconfident. What's the word?
I think so. Yeah.
Unconfident?
Yeah, I think that's
inconfident.
Unconfident sounds good.
It doesn't matter. You get what I'm saying. But I will say that I think that the Ravens are going to win. The signs that we need to watch, we want to keep an eye on the Libra placements and the mutable signs. So we're keeping an eye on the Pisces placements, especially the later degree Gemini placements, some of the Scorpio placements. Scorpio shifts into that 5th house as the game progresses. That usually bodes well. And Scorpio is not in any way hugely negatively impacted currently by the transits. Maybe some Sagittarius placements, but that's a little bit of a toss-up because of that Mercury station. If there are Sagittarius placements, I would expect the earlier degrees. Numbers to watch: 2, 4, and 42. And again, I do think that the Ravens will win, but I am internally screaming. So like it wouldn't be one that I bet on.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think, Trevor?
I love the fact that there are two siblings playing each other in the
Yeah.
NFL. Like,
Yeah.
just like the likelihood of that happening is just crazy,
Yeah,
you know?
for
But
sure.
so the Chargers, they've got they're both Harbaugh brothers, but
Okay.
John Harbaugh is the head coach of the Chargers. Actually, Jim Harbaugh is the coach of the Chargers. It's his first year as the head coach for them. He's coached in the NFL before, but he won the national championship at Michigan yesterday. So not yesterday, last year he won the national championship at Michigan. And little brother beat big brother in the Super Bowl a decade ago or 12 years ago or
Wow.
something like that.
So they've been in the league
They've
though.
been,
Okay.
yep. He left the NFL, came back because I think he's got some unfinished business. He wants to win a Super Bowl, you know.
Yeah.
But Jim came in this year. They are a year or two ahead of schedule, to be honest. They're 7-5. They're a good team right now, but nobody expected them to be as good as they are this year. They wanted to give Jim Harbaugh a year or two to coach, to get the right players in, to get the right scheme going. So them being as good as they are this year is great. But I do think that Jim, being the little brother that lost in the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
is going to be coming at the Ravens with everything that he's got. So
Absolutely.
I do think that the Chargers win. I think it's a
You think the
27-24.
Chargers are gonna win?
I think it's a 27-24 Chargers win. Close, but I do think that
You were influenced,
the
sir.
Chargers win.
You were influenced, sir. Yes, you were. Yes, you were, sir.
No, I was
No,
not.
you're gonna say you didn't check the score?
You showed me it.
Oh, okay. So I showed
You
you,
showed me
and
the
now
score.
it's the Chargers.
Yeah. I had the
Okay,
Chargers.
okay.
I
I'm
didn't
just
say anything.
teasing. I'm
Okay. Okay.
teasing.
All right.
Okay, we do. Okay, so he's saying the Chargers. I'm saying the Ravens. This is what I wrote, and I quote: I think the Ravens will start by looking less than outstanding and may have a switch up in performance around the time Mercury stations retrograde and moves beneath the horizon, thus influencing the home team, which that's the Chargers, in a somewhat negative or erratic manner. Final score 18. Ooh, I don't know. It's not cold there, so I don't think it would necessarily be a low scoring game.
It might be though.
Um, maybe like 18-23 for the losing score.
Okay.
And then like 25-28. Are those normal numbers?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mercury. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's another thing that I want to talk about because I had a game that I was really proud of. And I was actually able to like accurately delineate for the Steelers, which was my nightmare for so long. But on the 21st, there was the Thursday night game. It was the Steelers at the Browns. Retrospectively, when I was looking at how these teams were performing, the Steelers were way outpacing the Browns in terms
Yes.
of successes and just in terms of how they were performing. Pittsburgh, we figured out a team chart that works. This is after they split from the Steagles, so like the most recent time they had established themselves as the Steelers. It seems to be a reliable chart. It's the one that I'm going to be working with moving forward. I've had success 2 or 3 times over with this chart so far. And here again, we see that support. This should say benefics, but the benefics and the luminaries were below the horizon, and that offered support for the home team. The Browns were experiencing the transiting Mars conjunction, but the transiting moon was square their natal moon, and that is usually a deal breaker, right? There's something that is amiss. The end all be all win here was the Browns. They took the win. And number 3, I think, was the outstanding number, right? That was
Jerry Judy.
Jerry Judy.
Jerry
We love
freaking
Jerry
Judy.
Judy for the Browns. And also Jameis Winston, who is the new starting quarterback, who also got a touchdown, is a Capricorn. I have yet to look at these other pieces. I'll probably put together some type of visual, but I was really pleased with this general prediction, general interpretation. Another thing that held up was there was the increased likelihood of a concussion with this game, and somebody did get, what is the protocol? Concussion
Yep.
protocol?
They were evaluated.
They were
concussion.
evaluated, but they were cleared, fortunately, which we love to see. But it was somebody for the home team. So it was
Yep.
actually somebody for the Browns. Another thing, this is because Neptune was on the midheaven. That seems to be a signature associated with cognitive issues. Currently, it's in the sign of Pisces. When we see the midheaven shift to Aries, the lack of clarity is impacting the head, right? Because the head is what is associated with the Aries energy. So that's kind of the pattern there. Another thing, it was a game that was inundated with snow. Snow is being dumped on the field, and I think that had to do with
So much snow.
Neptune on the midheaven, though, because Neptune has to do with water, and that's frozen water.
There was so much. It was such a fun game to watch.
It was
Oh my
really intense.
goodness.
Was it a 1 point game? No, it wasn't a 1 point game. It was within a point. The Steelers were up 1 point until like the
It was a
last
5-point game.
few minutes, the last minute or so, and then the Browns won by about 5 points.
Yep.
Which I did have this as a 5-point win.
Yeah.
But this was not the final score. That's not correct, but I'm pretty pleased.
Yeah.
So I was really proud of this, and I wanted to share because naturally the days get away from me, but yeah. So final final review one more time to the point here. I think the Ravens are going to win. Trev thinks
Chargers.
Chargers are going to win because he's a hater. I think that the Chargers are going to start looking nice to begin with, and I'm curious to see how this Mercury works, but as it pushes beneath the horizon, I think that the Chargers might look a little bit weird, a little bit less good. Yeah.
It happened to them last week, and they pulled it out at the end. Started strong, let the Bengals come all the way back, ended up winning at the end.
So are we gonna fight over this
We're gonna
game?
fight.
We're not. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Maybe we'll be on screen next time. It really just depends on if my computer wants to work. It's also Mercury retrograde. Again, we both have luminaries ruled by Mercury, so we're all over the place. Kind of as at a baseline, but also especially during Mercury retrograde season. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Let's go watch the game.
Have a good week.
Bye.